Hello, friends. So, I want to talk about inflammation today. In fact, we've dedicated the past 2 weeks to inflammation specifically because it is such a big part of your healing journey. A lot of the time, we don't even realize how a lot of the things that we are doing actually does not serve us all that well. And inflammation is really at the root cause of a lot of hormonal problems, but it's also playing into, so many things, including something that many of you struggle with, and that's allergies this season. And I'm going to talk today about the connection between allergies and histamine. And because when you are having, allergic reactions to pollen and things like that, it's not just like the trees that are, or the grass or whatever is the pollen in the air, but is the question is, why is your body so responsive to everything, right? Like, why are you so stuffy? And if you think about it, you probably were not reacting that badly to inflammation when you were younger, right? So it's like, although now it's kind of changing, like now every kid has got allergies. But if you think about it, like, actually, why don't you share with us, like, for those of you who are 40 and above, do you remember like a lot of kids having allergy problems at school? Like when I went to school, and I went to school in 3 different countries, we didn't really have people with allergies except for like maybe there was like one kid at school who would be like very sensitive to things. But allergies were just like something that it was more of exception rather than a given. Where right now it's kind of the opposite, where it's like every kid has allergies. Every adult has allergies, right? So I really want to talk about this because there's a big connection between systemic inflammation as systemic and chronic inflammation, and that feeds into your histamine release that causes allergies, right? But there's a big connection between that and your hormones, and that's what really what I want to talk about, especially when it comes to estrogen dominance. So really, and what I want to leave you with today is some very solid, actionable um, yeah, so somebody's saying on Instagram, no, not at all. I was always playing outside with trees in park, and I'm 50 years young today. Awesome. And I'm wondering, are you having allergies now? Hopefully not. So yeah, so I want to leave you with some very actionable tools so that you can really start looking at lowering an inflammation and incorporating some dietary changes right away. Okay, so also let me know in the comments, like, what kind of questions do you have regarding inflammation or allergies? And we're going to focus on that more so than, it's not an open Q&A today. So I kind of want to be fairly focused on that conversation. So let's start off with, like, first of all, what is inflammation, right? So first of all, let's just establish the fact that allergies, inflammation is something that's very normal in the body. For example, when you twist your ankle, right, it swells up and it hurts, and that's inflammation. And so the purpose behind inflammation is to tell the body, the immune system immediately sends all the white cells to start building up, rebuilding, and basically start healing the wound, right? Or whether it's injury, right? On the other hand, the reason why you have pain when there is inflammation, it is because the reason is that it's actually asking you, stay away from that foot, don't step on that foot, rest that foot, right? So those are just some of the native tools, right, that the body is using to protect itself. The problem starts when the inflammation is a low grade inflammation that stays with the body for a very long time. So 6 months, 1 year becomes 2 years. And sometimes we're not even aware of the different things that can cause inflammation. And so I want to give you a list of symptoms today of like what to look out for, but it's also what causes. So let's start off with, actually, maybe let me start off with what are some of the symptoms of inflammation for you to really be mindful of, and to be like, oh, I did not realize that this is because of inflammation. So first thing is, I do feel like hormonal imbalances, like if struggling with thyroid, a lot of hot flashes, night sweats, if you're having just generally a lot of hormonal imbalances, inflammation can be at the root cause of all of that. Belly fat is definitely one big one. Increased food sensitivities. So, you're okay to eat, let's just say, chicken for the past 45 years, and then suddenly you're having chicken now and you're like, it does not agree with me. Cardiovascular diseases, that's not a big topic, but you know, in functional medicine today, now we know that just because you have high LDL cholesterol, it's not the full picture. In fact, most people who have heart attacks do not even have a heart attack because of high LDL, but because their triglycerides are high, the inflammatory markers are high. It's something that, so again, it kind of goes back to inflammation, right? You might be having high HSCRP, so it's highly sensitive CRP marker. That's a very simple, inexpensive blood test you can do. That's an indicator of how much inflammation you have in your body. I really wish that they were doing that more for people with cardiovascular diseases instead of just being like, oh, your cholesterol is high. It is such an oversimplification and such dumbed down view of somebody's health. And as women, because our estrogen drops, we tend to have more cardiovascular problems. Also, with your thyroid slowing down, cardiovascular diseases tend to be on the high side with women. And so how many of you here have high cholesterol as you've entered perimenopause and menopause? Probably many of you. And that is obviously a concern, but it also should be analyzed hand in hand with the inflammatory markers like the highly sensitive CRP. Elevated blood sugar levels, and especially the HA1C, which shows you like for the past 3 months. Autoimmune diseases, so if you're dealing with Hashimoto's, most likely you have inflammation going on. Anxiety and depression, bloating, weight gain, chronic pain. Chronic pain, you guys, I mean, this is something that I dealt with for the past year or so when I had problems with oxalates. And that was because of my digestive health. I wasn't digesting them properly. And then I was endogenously also producing oxalates on top of that. And so, you know, once I eliminated that inflammation resulting from high oxalates, my weight went down, my energy returned, and my pain is completely gone. Accelerated aging, allergies, right? So we talked a little bit about that. Digestive problems, including IBS. So as you can see, you know, and for some women, they kind of feel when they're inflamed. Like, who here can say, you know what, I can feel it in my body when I'm inflamed. I feel like this almost like it's not like a hot flash, but it's like this low grade fire that I'm feeling my body. And so I'm just curious, how many of you here have experienced that as well? So this is that's one aspect of it. So let's talk about what causes inflammation, and I'm going to give you 5 major causes of inflammation, and I'm curious, and I would love to open it up then to all of you so you can contribute further and tell me what you think are other causes of inflammation as well. So I will start off with the first one, you know, and that is food. And so there is you know, I think one of the most common questions that we get in our mailbox is, I'm already eating really well. I'm really taking care of myself. And then there's a whole list of very long symptoms that this person is sharing with us, right? And so my heart goes out to you, because most of you here are actually very interested in your health. Otherwise, you probably will not be want to listen to me, right? And follow Outside Hormones Balance. And so you obviously are super interested. You want to take care of yourself. And so food, which is can be a tricky one, because you could be eating healthy, but some of the foods might not be agreeing with you. So let's just, you know, a good example of that would be, I met this woman when I was traveling. Some of you may know, I did on the East Coast, I did 5 months in my camper van last summer. And, you know, and so I met this woman in one of the campgrounds, and she was traveling on her own as well. She also had a dog. So we quickly struck a conversation, and she's like, you know, I'm eating so healthily. And yet she's had a history of breast cancer. She's been having a lot of different health challenges. And so I'm like, and she's like, you know, tell me what else should I do? So I said to her, but just tell me quickly, like, what's your day like? And she's like, you know, first thing she says is like, I'm always having whole grain bread, never processed flour, right? I'm like, okay, great. But are you eating gluten? And she's like, yeah. But what's wrong with gluten? And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's definitely one of the big contributing factors. And so there is, you know, in functional nutrition, we look at highly inflammatory foods, which are gluten, dairy, soy. It can be corn, eggs for some people, and we like to eliminate them for a period of between 30 to 60 days, right? And do an anti-inflammatory elimination diet, right? And then bring the inflammation down. And then you start reintroducing these foods and see how your body responds. And through inflammatory responses, you would know which food is your friend and which food is your foe. The other misconception is that you can be eating seemingly healthy food, but that food might not agree with you. As I gave you an example of chicken, there could be a lot of other things. So who here could share like, something that you've been eating that's seemingly really healthy, but does not serve you? A good example is people who are having high histamine issues. I'm going to talk about inflammation and histamine, right? And allergies. People who are having high histamine already, due to whatever reasons, can't do fermented foods. So this is the person who eats sauerkraut, and instead of feeling better, she's actually feeling worse. Now she's got like rashes coming out. She's beginning to get headaches. She's got hives. She gets rash on her face, right? She's hearing ringing in her ears. I mean, all these high histamine stuff, right? So that's a good example of fermented. So Kate is saying fermented foods, absolutely. So that's one good example. Somebody greens. Yeah. So it's just something you really need to be mindful of. What I have found is that you kind of the difficult thing about nutrition is that whoever you follow who will say that, they have the definitive answer to how to eat for good health, I'll say, turn around and run. Okay? Because the reason why I say that is because, see, the thing is that everyone is so individual, so different. I need to eat differently than what you need to eat. For example, how many of you here might say, you know what? I feel best when I don't eat grains. Like I follow the paleo kind of diet and grains just do not agree with me. Amen to you. Like if that is you, that's your diet. That's the way you should be, that's the way you design your eating habit, right? But for some of us, like grains for me, as long as they're gluten-free, I feel grounded, I feel satisfied, right? And so you need to be really respectful of that when it comes to food. And so the difficult part about nutrition is that I can give you some level of guidance of like, eliminate this, eliminate that, right? Like we know that gluten doesn't serve people. Most women do not do well on dairy, okay? Especially unfermented, like don't drink milk. You're not a baby anymore. You can put a lot of other things in your coffee or your tea, So anyway, so that's excuse me, because you can hear I still have my cough. It's a very humbling experience anyway, but that's another story. If you guys want me to give you a long update, I can do that later. So so that's basically about food, and then adding foods that we know are highly nutritious. I am a strong believer that eating meat, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're eating it from responsible sources. It is from preferably from places that practice regenerative agriculture, that is grass-fed and grass-finished, fish that is well caught, right? And minimize processed foods, packaged foods. It's really, you guys, it's really simple. Take a look at your cart when you go shopping, right? Food shopping. What is the percentage of food that is in packaged stuff? If it's dried like beans or something, that's fine. But like frozen dinners, right? Going out to eat, that kind of stuff they're using cheap oils, cheap ingredients. Most of the time it's not organic. Restaurants operate on super slim margins. They only make decent money on drinks, right? And so, so just be aware that when you're going out and you're living on outside food, you are going to be having a lot more inflammation coming from your food as compared when you prepare something at home. This is the reason why our recipes are not particularly fancy, but they're highly practical because they came from my kitchen, from the kitchen of our team, where we make things super practical and super easy so that everybody can learn to not just cook, but even like, I just call it food preparation, because a lot of time, if you follow my Instagram ugly photos, it's like really about like putting things together rather than be obsessed about cooking. Okay. So we talked about food. So adding, adding a lot of greens, adding a lot of liver supporting fruits and vegetables, right? So foods with greens would be things like, I love the brassica family, right? If you talk about anti-inflammatory foods to surround yourself with, bring on the brassica. So brassica would be like the cabbage family, right? So cauliflower. In fact, you guys are making a cauliflower soup with porcini mushrooms later today. I'm very excited about that. And then, and then the broccoli and the broccoli sprouts and the Brussels sprouts. And what am I missing? Arugula, which is my number one favorite. Throw away the goddamn lettuce. Bring on the arugula. Lettuce is completely, you guys, is so devoid of any nutrients. It's just a complete waste of your calories, if you will. I don't care about calories, but you're just wasting an opportunity to put something really nourishing in your body, right? Let's see what else. Beets can be great if you can tolerate them. They're amazing for the liver, right? But they're not in the brassica family, by the way. They're separate in a different family. So yeah, so those are just like some really amazing foods. If 70% of your plate contains fresh vegetables, and also rotating the colors of your vegetables and fruits, right, is really important. That's you're gonna be golden, and staying away from those inflammatory foods. Okay, let me talk about cause number 2 for inflammation. That's alcohol. I'm sorry to say, but this is, especially during COVID. I mean, alcohol companies and retailers have like literally doubled their revenue because of, for obvious reasons, right? Whether it's boredom, whether it's just hardship of life, right? Alcohol became all-time high consumed item. And so I just need you to be mindful of that. There's so much of research that shows the connection between alcohol and impact on the liver, alcohol impact on estrogen dominance, impact of alcohol on breast cancer, right? And so you gotta know yourself. If having a glass of wine at night does not impact you at all, meaning you can sleep really well, you don't have any reactions, you just feel like really nice and mellow, great, do it, right? But if you're the kind of person, and that's me, have a glass of wine, then look at I'm wearing my Oura ring, right? So that shows me the quality of my sleep. It destroys my sleep. My deep sleep is nowhere to be seen. I wake up in the middle of the night. I have to take some herbs to fall back to sleep. It's just not worth it. And so, I suspect, I have not had this analyzed. I probably should, but I suspect I'm a really bad alcohol metabolizer. And so it stays in my body a lot longer. I tell you, when I can drink booze, I can have a glass of wine at 3:00 and then I sleep okay. But, on most days, like, that's not going to happen. And, most of the time when I drink, that's because I want to be out with friends. And that happens like after 5 p.m., right? And so I know it doesn't serve me. It suppresses my immune system. I don't feel good. And so that is a huge inflammatory contributor trigger for me. Is it for you? I don't know. You need to find that out. And that brings me to the next point, and that is inflammation coming from coffee. I think coffee is, and I'm not talking about all things caffeinated. In fact, the drink that I'm drinking right now is, can you guys see what I'm drinking? It's kind of green color. Who wants to guess what this is? So I'm drinking that. And so let's move on to coffee, Jen. So I'm not saying, Helen is saying matcha. Yes, that is matcha tea, green matcha. Yes, that's matcha tea. So not everything caffeinated is bad. It's just that some people do not metabolize coffee very well. And it is a hugely inflammatory drink. Who here has given up coffee and it's like your life has completely changed? Your anxiety has dropped. You're not shaking anymore. You don't have panic attacks. You are not mean to people. You sleep better. You've lost weight. I mean, just share if that is you. If you're having a cup of coffee a day and it does not impact you at all, I say continue. Diana Lane is saying me. Yeah. And so you got to know yourself, right? And how things impact you. All right, let's move on to reason number 4 for inflammation. That's a huge one, you guys, and that's a lack of sleep. So, and that is highly problematic because, especially as we enter menopause and perimenopause, our sleep is just not the same as it was before. And many of you can feel it, right? And so what's been happening is that it's kind of like ridiculous. It's kind of like this vicious circle where you can't sleep, your inflammation goes up, then your hormones go out, and these hormones are creating bad sleep, and so it's like around and around it goes. So we have on our blog, if you go on our blog, hormonesbalance.com, hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com, there is an article I wrote. It took me 8 months to write this article about how to fix sleep after 45. And it gives you a lot of tools on what to look for when it comes to sleep, whether it's magnesium, whether it's progesterone, whether it's your thoughts, whether it's GABA, whether it's, drinking coffee too late in the day, right? Like there's so many different things that can impact your sleep. So fix your sleep, and it's completely possible. One of the hacks that I have found is, let me tell you like a few things I've discovered through my own journey. And I kind of created a checklist actually in an article for you to go through the checklist and see like, oh, let me do this, let me try this. And then tomorrow I'm going to try that, right? It's like my secret formula is eating early, meaning like I'll try to have dinner at about 4 or 5 p.m. And then I go to bed early. I go to bed at 9 p.m. So basically, I'm giving myself 4 or 5 hours before sleep eating, because the closer I eat to sleep, the more my body is so engaged putting the energy into digestion rather than rest, then I just can't sleep properly. And so then I wake up and da-da. The second thing is blue light blocking glasses, right? So I have those really mean ones, and they're kind of dark, but it really makes a huge difference. If I'm staring at a computer watching a movie, because I don't have TV at home, I just use my laptop to watch a movie, and I'm staring at the light, right, from a computer. And by the way, all these softwares that block out blue light, total BS. Like it's just not enough for most of us. So what do? I just end up putting glasses on, and then I can see it by baby. The third thing that really impacts me, so I said alcohol. There's the third one, definitely. The fourth one is progesterone. So my secret was that I thought progesterone wasn't making a difference until I upped it to 50 milligrams a day. And now I'm actually my Aura ring shows me my deep sleep has gone to 2 hours per night, which is really nice. Before I was like an hour and a half at the most. So made a huge difference there. So those are mine. Have you guys Gina is saying I fixed my sleep with progesterone you have on the website, magnesium glycinates. So yeah, so for me, magnesium doesn't make a difference, maybe because I'm not deficient anymore. So, but if you are deficient in magnesium, then this could be a very big difference, right? So, okay, let's move on to the last one, and that is stress. I mean, I don't need to tell you. How many of you here have had a situation where you went through a stressful situation in your life, and then, and then you just feel like, and then just basically your health collapses, right? I've seen this over and over again. And so that's another one, you need to be mindful of that, not ignore it, not be like, oh, I get over it, but just mindfully and intentionally address where the toxicity and the stress is coming from for you to address it. So those are some of the major points, I think, that are causing inflammation. If you have other thoughts of what else is causing inflammation, drop it in a comment and I'll just read that later. Let me move on to the next thing is I'm going to talk in a second about what do you do to address inflammation with some herbs and supplements and stuff like that. So we'll come to this in just a sec. But I wanted to share with you a sense of awareness of why is it that it matters and how inflammation is connected to your to allergies, and then how that translates to really messed up hormones. So let me just talk about something that's so seasonal and that's just around the corner for most of us. I'm kind of jealous, you guys, all of you who are actually experiencing proper spring, because I'm in Colorado. I live up in the mountains in the Rockies, and we are very far from having any kind of spring. In fact, it snowed yesterday again, and I'm kind of like sometimes tired of the 6 months of winter we have here. So we are far from spring, and nothing is springing yet. But I know looking at a lot of photos of my friends, everybody's showing like beautiful new plants that are popping out in their space. And so if that is you, you might be already experiencing it. So what's the big deal about, how can you protect yourself from allergies? And by the way, Jen, let's pop out that question about how do you know how to predict if you will get seasonal allergies today, right? And what do you think is the answer to that? In fact, you know what? Let's do something fun, Jen. And Whoever gets the answer right, we'll send you a copy of my book called Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. How about that? Right. So the question is how to predict if you get seasonal allergies. And the person who gets the answer right will send you a copy of our book. And Jen will our customer support team will reach out to you for your mailing address. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So we'll circle back to this in just a second. Food sensitivities cause inflammation, Marta is saying. Yeah, sure. So we've already addressed that. That's about food, immune system, liver. No, it's be more specific. Like, how do you predict that you get seasonal allergies? Like, how can you know now if you have inflammation, you get allergies? Laura got it. Yes, that's the answer. Awesome. Very good, Laura. Congratulations, Laura Wheelock. Jen, so let's reach out to her. Laura, we'll be reaching out to you for your mailing address. So just let us know, and then we'll send you a copy of our book. So yeah, so if your inflammation is high, it is going to impact your liver. Sorry, I'm having a housekeeper in the house right now. So if you're hearing some sounds, that's because of that. So high inflammation impacts your liver. Your liver is not going to be working as efficiently. And then the liver, there's a huge connection between your liver and the immune system. That impacts your immune system, and your immune system becomes overreactive. And so every little allergy, suddenly your body just goes, boo, reacts to everything, right? And so that is the mechanism behind it. So this is how you know you will get seasonal allergies if you're highly inflamed. And we talked about the symptoms of inflammation earlier in our talk today. So let me just quickly go over why does it matter? Like when you have high inflammation, like what's the big deal about it? How does it impact your hormones? And if anyone has any ideas, please share this with us. I will tell you, so let me just cover three main reasons. There's more, but I'll just cover the main three. The first one is that when you have allergies, the body goes on kind of, on an alert, and it releases more cortisol, okay? And so when you have high cortisol levels, everything starts tanking. Cortisol is when it's too much cortisol, it becomes inflammatory. It steals your progesterone. You're not converting your thyroid hormone from T4 to T3 correctly, right? So it's a huge issue. So that's number one. High inflammation causes high cortisol release, which then messes with your hormones. Number two, which is really fascinating, when you're inflamed, guess what? Your cells, like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA cells, are not as responsive to hormones as they would be otherwise. Meaning, you might be having do a blood draw, right? And it shows you your thyroid is great. You do, blood work, and it shows your progesterone is great. But then when you are feeling low thyroid issue, you're feeling like you've got low progesterone. So you're like, so this is the confusing part, right? For a lot of people, like, why am I having sufficient progesterone in my blood work, but at the same time, I'm having all the symptoms of low progesterone? That doesn't make sense. And one of the reasons could be that because of inflammation, the cells are just not as responsive to progesterone, testosterone, to DHEA, to testosterone, and to thyroid. Just examples, right? So it basically shuts down your cell receptors, your hormone cell receptors so it's like a receptor is like a door, right? And that door gets just shut. And so that hormone might be circulating in the blood, but the door is shut. It can't come inside to do its work. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, did you guys know about this? Because no one talks about this, like lower inflammation to balance your hormones. All right, next one is the third reason the third way inflammation impacts your hormones is that it increases the aromatase activity. Aromatization, meaning it's a process of converting testosterone to estrogen, okay? And we can either slow down that process, and it's called aromatase inhibition, So things like, for example, passion flower is a good example of an herb that will actually stop it from converting testosterone to estrogen. A lot of bodybuilders do that because they're like, they want to have a lot of testosterone, but they don't want to have any estrogen, right? But for women, but for when it comes to inflammation, what happens then is that when you have inflammation, you're producing a lot more estrogen as compared to testosterone, which is not a bad thing in itself. But the problem is you're producing too much, you don't have enough progesterone. You're basically giving yourself estrogen dominance. So my question for you guys here is that how many of you feel that when you have inflammation and allergies during this time, your estrogen dominant symptoms get worse? Okay, I'll repeat this. How many of you feel like inflammation is actually causing worse estrogen dominant symptoms here? Meaning like your so symptoms would, just in case you're new to this, just the symptoms of estrogen dominance would include things like having suddenly fibrocystic breasts, your breasts hurt a lot. It could be that you are experiencing, you suddenly having a lot of period problems and your period is super painful. You're having exaggerated PMS. Gina is saying me, Kwana is saying me. Yeah. You feel a lot more tired. You feel a lot more moody. You might be having actually less of a period or super heavy period. It could be that you're having migraines before your periods or during ovulation. It could be that you are experiencing some weight gain around your hips and thighs, right? Those are some of the symptoms of estrogen dominance. And so they are not uncommon. And then it can be caused because of inflammation. So, and then the last thing, let me just mention before we talk about more solutions, is that the one of the big things is that inflammation causes, like I was saying, leads to allergies, and allergies happen because your histamine is just like over the top. So histamine, as a lot of experts like to use the analogy of a bucket. When your bucket is very full with histamine, it overflows. That's when you start having all these allergic reactions. Here's a problem with histamine. Histamine upregulates estrogen production, right? So here's, you have this crazy thing where histamine drives up even more estrogen and now giving you even more estrogen dominance. That's part of the reason why during allergies, a lot of people actually feel worse. So what can you do, right? So let's talk about solutions. We talked about anti-inflammatory diet. We talked about fixing your sleep, fixing your stress, whatever toxic is happening in your life, right? Carla is saying, for example, I experienced that my breasts become more sensitive. Yeah, so for sure. Thank goodness I don't have any allergies, but I feel like especially in the United States, it's become so common. It's almost like, I'm just going to pop an antihistamine, no big deal. Like everybody's just popping an antihistamine. And that in itself, I mean, I think, there is a time and place, like if you have to, I don't know, go on stage or, address 300 people online and you're feeling all nasally and headachy and stuff like that. I mean, you do what you need to do to feel better, right? But in the long term, there's also problems with antihistamines, right? The biggest thing is the fact that it impacts your liver. It also can create more sensitivity to allergens when you stop taking it. And like with all prescription stuff, there's always a side effect to it, right? So I want to talk a little bit about, let me just say this. When you embark on a low inflammatory diet, and to start off with, and by the way, both of my books, Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, both are available on Amazon. You just enter like Magdalena Hormones and both the books show up. They are based on the highly anti-inflammatory diet. So Gina is saying nettle is good. It is. And so that's what I want to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about some herbs. Where, you cannot out-supplement or out-herb a good diet. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to start off with a really nice, clean diet, anti-inflammatory diet. And then when you combine it with a few supplements I want to talk about today, that's when the magic happens, because your body is like, oh, finally I'm getting like less inflammation from all that food. And, you're not drinking so much alcohol. You switched your coffee over to some other caffeinated drink. You're like, oh, thank goodness, right? And then when you receive the supplement, that's when your body's like, oh, now I can really enjoy it, right? What a wonderful thing to add on. So this is what supplements work really well when you combine it with a clean diet. So what supplements can you do? What herbs can you do? So Gina mentioned nettles. Yes. So nettles are amazing. If you can go to your couple of ways you can do nettles. You can do nettle tea. If wait for nettle tea to buy it like sometime in July, because if you have somewhere around there from a local store, herbal store, and the reason why I say that is because nettles come up early in the summer. You want to have the fresh nettles. If you're buying nettles now, you're going to be getting the batch from last summer, and it's not going to be very fresh, right? So a little pointer here on when to buy nettles. Nettles are amazing. Nettles in combination with quercetin are the natural antihistamine. And by the way, you know, I did a couple of videos about that. We have a product in our store called actually quercetin and nettles. And it's by the way, I'm taking it for my lungs as well. I'm taking a lot of things for my lungs because, hey, you guys, it looks like I might be having like a long COVID lung thing situation. Thank God I don't have like long COVID, but I'm having still issues with my lungs. I stopped nebulizing for a couple of days because my nebulizer broke down. I was using it so much, or maybe I was just putting too many weird things in there. I don't know. And it broke down. And so I just got a new one, but I was not nebulizing for a couple of days and I really felt it. So back to nebulizing, I've got like a massive unit now. It's like industrial strength because that's what my lungs need. Yeah, so quercetin is also, like, for those of you who are dealing with lung issues, quercetin has also got some amazing research on helping with dealing with lung infections. We combine it with nettles, right? Because that's really, those are like two. By the way, so quercetin is a compound found in apples. So you know the saying, an apple a day will keep the doctor away, right? That's actually quercetin. And we've got 600 milligrams of quercetin in here, which is equivalent, guess what, to 24 red apples. So that's pretty much, you would have to do 24 apples to catch up with this. And then we have like equivalent of a couple of teaspoons of nettles, which would be like equivalent of like, I don't know, whatever, fresh, multiply it by 3, 6 teaspoons of fresh nettles. So that's a really great supplement to consider. Let's see what else. The other thing, which is, you know, most of you, everybody knows curcumin, right? And so we have a product in our store called curcumina, which is, by the way, in Polish, it's curcumin. So I thought it was a nice name, curcumina. And here's the deal, you guys. I want to share this with you because I think it's really interesting information. Is that you know, over the years, there's been research done on turmeric being really well absorbed in the presence of pepper, right? Which is correct. Problem is that you need to understand the mechanism behind pepper. The reason why we decided not to do pepper in our formula is because pepper, the way this functions is that pepper loses up your junctions in the gut in order for the turmeric to come through. So it kind of like agitates the gut in order for the turmeric compounds to come through. How many of you here feel like you have not been feeling great when you take a turmeric supplement? Like your GI is just not the same. And a lot of manufacturers, you know, kind of go, which is like this typical Western approach. I'm gonna put in more pepperine in order to create more efficiency, efficacy of the product, and that can actually lead to an IBS for people who are sensitive. Now, what we have found, though, through research and through our own formulators, is that when you combine turmeric with all the essential oils that it comes with, it actually creates incredible bioavailability. And we have used a patent here from a manufacturer of curcumin called BCM95. And what they have done is that they showed in their research that not only does this got a higher bioavailability as compared to curcumin with pepper, but also stays in your body a lot longer. And that's one of the things I really, really, really loved about it. And so this is the reason why. Don't ask us why there's no pepperine in here, because we have all the essential oils, and that's all that's needed for incredible bioabsorption, absorption, and bioavailability. So yeah, so this is one of them. And then, you know, make sure that you do essential omegas, right? That's the classical. How many of you here has studied essential omegas and you're like, my allergies are so much better now, right? My pains and aches are so much better. So if you're talking about lowering inflammation, supporting your diet with essential oils is really cool. So it can be really helpful. Make sure that there's a lot of scummy products in the market. Make sure that when you're buying an essential omega, It's triple filtered. It comes from clean fish. It's been tested. It comes from a GMP facility because then it's been tested for molecularly it's been tested for things like mercury, which is a common problem, a lot of essential oils, and so a lot of omegas. So those are just some of the things that you just to be mindful of. Okay. Yeah, and then if you feel like supporting us, we have essential omegas too. So we have so just to let you know, the curcumina, the essential omegas, and the quercetin and nettles comes as a set, and you get, Jen, help me out here. What's the discount that you're getting? Let's take a look. You're getting a discount when you're getting that as a kit, and we call it the inflammation support kit. So if you feel so compelled in supporting us, then these 3 products, you get some nice savings, and Jen will tell me in a second. Yeah. So Gina is saying, love the black seed oil too. Nigella. Yeah. Nigella sativa is an amazing one as well. Not everybody can tolerate it, unfortunately. And nettle's good for hot flashes. So yeah. So anyway, let me. Yes, they can be. Depends what causes the hot flashes. Hot flashes. And by the way, Halen, if you go to our website, hormones. So we have 2 websites, right? Well, then I was our store, and then we have Hormones Balance, hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com, and we are. And you can look for an article there on. You can look for an article there that talks about hot flashes. So there's many reasons for hot flashes. So you're right, inflammation could be one reason, but it also could be because of low estrogen levels. It could also be because of poor blood sugar balance. And so, a lot of women have told us in the past that they've corrected their estrogen, they still have hot flashes. They added progesterone, they still have hot flashes. But when they took out coffee, that's when hot flashes stopped, right? And why coffee? I talked about it earlier today, because of inflammation. So it all depends on what is your reason why you're having a hot flash. Once you find out what the reason is, then you can address the reason. Last year before doing my trip, 5-month trip in my camper van on the East Coast, I developed these hot flashes from hell. And the reason was that I felt that it was a combination of the stress of preparation and just doing the travel on my own. It was a little stressful at the beginning, and so I realized that the stress caused inflammation, and I was so inflamed that it gave me hot flashes because I tried doing all different herbs like black cohosh, and I added flaxseed, and I added dong quai to my, and a month later I'm still having hot flashes. So it was only once I kind of like calmed down, developed a routine, stop being, I will say, I don't know how many of you have lived in a camper van before. It is a very, very different lifestyle, especially when you're still running a business and working full time. And so once I got into a really good routine and figured out a lot of the kinks, then I chilled the hell out. And that's when hot flashes went away. Okay, Jen, why don't we do a couple of questions? And by the way, on the kit, I just got the information from our lovely Jen here today that is you saving $14.20 when you're getting that as a kit. I'm losing my hair rapidly. What can help? Dawn, so we have a full hair article on Hormones Balance. It's very unfair of me to say what it is. It's not one thing. It all depends on why you're losing your hair. Is it because of low thyroid? Is like a classical reason why, and typically is combined with losing eyebrows and eyelashes and a lot of other symptoms like putting on weight and anxiety, depression, constipation, feeling cold. That could be thyroid, could be low estrogen. It could be because of some toxicity, high mercury levels. It can be because you're just low on biotin. It could be something as simple as that. So take a look at the article, print it out, so you go down the list, and then you will know what to fix. I'm going to do a sip of my tea. Jen, I have not been coughing, so that's one big win. I'm not choking on myself. Val is saying, does bioidentical hormones help once you resolve inflammation? Yes. Thank you for asking that question. In fact, what we have found is, some of you, I was actually doing a lot of research in preparation for this call and just for when we were creating content. And one of the things that I've also, we should know, we want to be quiet, okay? One of the reasons that I have found is that inflammation can also create a paradoxical response to bioidentical hormones, meaning that, like you get on this call here, and then like McDonough is talking about all these amazing things that progesterone can do, and then and then you try it and you're like, well, that didn't work. Like, I can't sleep, it's giving me heart palpitations, I'm feeling really anxious doing this. Progesterone is supposed to be the opposite, right? And you're like, what the hell is going on here? Turns out that because of inflammation, a lot of women who are highly inflamed can also have a paradoxical response to bioidentical hormones, right? Meaning, instead of feeling wonderful, and they actually having an opposite reaction, right? So that's another thing to consider here. So your response to bioidentical hormones it can be different, can be so much better when you lower inflammation. But also, just so that you know, progesterone can also help you lower inflammation. So that's another factor here. Okay, move on. Let's move on. What tests are important to do to check all these things? So when you say all these things, like, what things are those? Because I talked about so many different things. So let's just maybe ask for clarification. Lazarina, but how is she gonna get her probiotics in? It's a vicious cycle. Oh, I see. If you cannot do fermented foods, best to heal. That comes in a histamine. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about histamines here because it is a super complex topic, but I would love to refer you to a couple of good resources. Mast Cell 360. So mast M-A-S-T cell CELL 360.com. Dr. Beth O'Hara has got amazing resources on mast cell and histamine issues. Go and learn how to do that. The whole idea is that you stop taking fermented foods for a while, lower your inflammation, fix whatever is causing the inflammatory responses, and then you reintroduce. Because you guys, the whole idea is not to live your life on 10 foods. That's not what I'm promoting. No one, no sane, practical practitioner would ever tell you that. It's like, remove all the fermented food, all the high histamine foods for life and never ever eat them again. I mean, what kind of a life would that be? The whole idea is that there's nothing wrong with these foods. It's your body is in a state of imbalance and is reacting to things. Your job is to find out what's causing the imbalance and inflammation, lower that, and then bring those foods back in. Joey is saying, I don't eat or drink anything inflammatory, do so much and still can't metabolize anything, have a low COMT gene because of it, don't metabolize dopamine or stress hormones. Any tips? Yeah, so I mean, I don't know your full health history, right? One thing that I've become a lot more mindful of and respectful of, and it's not that I had no respect for it, but I think I had very little awareness of in the past, is the role of trauma, stress in our lives, right? And so, it's not work that I'm doing or practicing because that's just not my domain. I'm gonna pick a lane. But what is happening is that there's a lot of really wonderful resources now, whether it's Dr. Dispenza or books like The Body Keeps the Score, that talks about the things that happened in the past, like how trauma can impact our entire health, connection to hormones, connection to cancer, inflammation. And so, Joy, I don't know your health history and what is going on. One of the things that a lot of times I think it would be good for you probably to work with a functional practitioner and get a second opinion. A lot of times, we like to think that everything we do is healthy until somebody points out that, our blind corners, right? Like, I had my blind corners too. It was like, when I started having all these COVID stuff, like, I was pretty ignorant about my hip and my lungs and how important they were. And I wish that I had done a lot of things earlier because now the virus has kind of taken over my lungs and I'm having a really hard time dealing, like, not hard time, but I just have to do a lot of things to fight off the virus, right? The viral infection. I wish I had done. So anyway, my point is that we all have blind spots, and so have somebody else point this out to you and work with you. And so this is one of my things that I want to just share with you is that you've done a lot of like dietary changes, right? And you truly like, you follow our protocols, you've got it dialed in, you do all the supplements, you do all the herbs, you're trying to sleep well, you're moving your body, right? And things still aren't moving the needle. I would say move on to the next level, the energetic level, right? Of trauma, of your own belief system. How much do you love yourself? How much of toxicity is there in your relationships? How, do you set healthy boundaries? Or are you like that, that woman who needs to be loved by everyone, so you put everybody else as a priority and not yourself, right? We all have stories like that, right? So that's just what I put it out there, to pay attention to that if all the functional, like the nutrition supplement herb stuff, just isn't working. Jen, give me a second, let me just pick up a couple of questions from excuse me. Let me pick up a couple of questions on Instagram. Hey, you guys, I know this question is about brain. I don't want to talk about brain today. I mean, brain, brain health and inflammation works very much hand in hand. We're going to do a lot more brain work later this year. But I would just say, it's so much of it is everything we talked about, including essential omegas. Omega-3, right, is highly protective for the brain. Progesterone is highly protective for the brain. And by the way, one of the things that is given to men when it comes to progesterone, when progesterone is given to men, is like in the case of TBI, traumatic brain injury, right? So it has restorative function, and for women, it's got a protective function as well. So progesterone definitely. Okay, let me just there's a lot of comments and conversations on Instagram. There's a lot of chit chatters there. Do we ship international right now? No, but we are working towards getting Canada set up for shipping. So I know the Canadians are finally be like, oh, finally. We are working on a UK and Australia next. If Canada is success, it's not easy to ship supplements overseas, you guys, so that you know. Okay, so I think let's take just one more question. Rita is asking, can estrogen dominance show up as acne? Okay, not so much. It's unless you have high testosterone. So remember, the high testosterone gets converted to estrogen, right? So you end up being estrogen dominant. So yes, but it's typically is the high testosterone in women. So as women, we need testosterone, but too much of it can manifest in a form of facial growth and acne. The way to fix testosterone in women is to really look at your blood sugar levels and inflammation. So, for example, women with PCOS, which typically happens because of high inflammation, high testosterone, these women are not ovulating. Acne is one of the symptoms, right, that accompanies that particular hormonal imbalance. And so, yeah, so we have, my books cover, I talk in my books, there's one whole chapter on just how to balance your blood sugar levels. So that's going to be a really good, important one. In terms of, once you're fixing your diet, one of the big tips here, pro tip here for you, is to start off your day with a savory breakfast and not do any sugar for breakfast. It's going to be one of the easiest way of balancing your blood sugar levels. But on top of that, there's a couple of things like chromium, fenugreek, chromium. So chromium picolinate is a supplement. You can also add things like fenugreek, cinnamon. Those are some of the herbs that also have wonderful blood sugar balancing properties. In India, in Ayurveda, they are used as sugar balancers. Okay, so the other reason for acne, actually, I see it as the number one reason for acne, is food sensitivity. So I don't know if you guys know this, but my journey actually with this space, the health space, started because of acne. So I used to have cystic acne all around my face, on my chest. I would have it on my back. I even had it on my buttock. And it turned out that was because of my sensitivities to gluten, dairy, and eggs that were causing a lot of acne. So today, let's say I have like a threshold that I can eat, like maybe four eggs a week. If I go more than that, I start getting pimples as well till today. So it's actually acne is typically two causes. One is hormonal, I talked about, and then the other one is food sensitivities. So when you do, again, if you do the anti-inflammatory diet, right, and you started the elimination diet and you reintroduce the foods, one of the things to look out for, and I talk about in my books, one of the things to look out for is the quality of your skin. Be like, oh, suddenly, that zit or 3 that popped out, it's not out of nowhere. It's inflammation, right? The question is for you to uncover what has caused that to pop out. Okay, you guys, I need to preserve my lungs so that I don't have another coughing bout, and I need to nebulize. That's my nebulization time. Lovely to have you here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope this is helpful today, just to understand how inflammation impacts your hormones, causes allergies. You can protect yourself. By the way, if you want to do like quercetin and nettles and stuff like that, do it now, because you need to use it for about a couple of weeks. Come on, jump. Come on, jump. You want to show up on video? Come on, you're so curious. He's my little show off. Come on, jump. There we go. So Charlie says, you've got to take your quercetin or nettles or nettles at least 2 weeks. No, I've got makeup on. At least 2 weeks before seasonal allergies kick in, so that you don't have allergies this year, even with your doggy. All right, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I feel like the week is coming to a nice, beautiful end, and wishing you all a highly anti-inflammatory, allergy-free season coming up. Do whatever you need to do to protect yourself, and it's gonna be so worth it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.